Okay, there we are. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Nick and Joe Show. I'm Nick. He's Joe. And you can't see him, but behind the scenes is the brains of the operation. That's John Melky. So I want to say, there he is. I want to say thanks to John for all his efforts at making this show sound better every week. Joseph, it's been a busy week.
Nick, it has.
Yes. Now, one of the things I think we want to start with tonight, we were just talking about it briefly before the show. And Craig has joined us in the chat room. That's great. Good to see you, Craig. Is this whole Roe v. Wade thing and how it is just, it's tearing I won't say it's tearing the country apart, but there's just the United States apart. There's a bleed over into Canada as well that I want to talk to. Hi, Christina. I see you in there. And the whole idea that there's a false premise that's built on. And for those who don't know, I can't think many adults in North America don't know what Roe v. Wade is. But it was a bad decision by the Supreme Court in 1972. Was that the year it was passed? Or
The United States Supreme
yeah, the U.S.
something
Supreme
like
Court.
that, and the United States Supreme Court. So let's be clear about that.
Well, yes, good point. It's down in the States that this is going on. Now, they're going to overturn it because it's bad law. And they knew it was bad law when they passed it. But it became the kind of standard that everybody down there lived by. So what the heck is the name of that judge? Alito? The Supreme Court judge?
He's one of them, yeah.
Yeah, he said that, look, this is not based on our opinions about abortion. This is bad law. So we're going to repeal it, but that doesn't mean, and this is where things go off the rails, because down there in the States, the Democrats, almost, I won't say almost to a man, but the majority of them are losing their mind over this because they think it's going to put an end to the fictitious right. And I say fictitious because nowhere can you show me where it's written that a woman has a right to an abortion. But down there, they feel that this is going to stop women from having abortions, when in fact, all it does is turn it back to the states, the individual states. So if Texas wanted to pass a law and let's say Nevada didn't, well, it's a state issue, in other words, state by state. And they don't want to even mention that because as soon as you do, their argument goes out the window. So they're so upset about it. They're showing up in front of some of the homes of the Supreme Court justices from the U.S. in the U.S. and demonstrating right outside their homes. Now, there's several problems with that, and number one is 1973. Thanks, Craig. I was close. One of the problems with protesting outside a judge's home, and this is true across a lot of countries, not just in the United States, it's against the law because what happens is that threat of intimidation. It's not just a hundred nutcases show up in front of your house. What they're really saying is, we know where you live, and yes, most of us will leave. But you never know about that one crackpot. You know, maybe they might come out of the woodwork and try to do you harm or intimidate your family, all because you're making a decision we don't like. That's against the law. And the White House is turning not a blind eye. They've put a blindfold on and said, they don't even, say, well, the president says that, their people are very upset about this. That's not the right answer. The right answer is these people need to be rounded up and arrested and charged for the attempted intimidation of a government official. That's what needs to happen, and nothing like that's coming anywhere near close. So the spillover, and I'm going to let you in on this here in a second, Joe. So the spillover is now Prime Minister Trudeau is saying that any woman who wants to come from the United States to have an abortion can come to Canada. We don't have an abortion law at all. There's no regulations, nothing about it. And why would he go meddling in that backyard? Why is he bringing that up now? I'm telling you, Joseph, this is just insane. The kind of madness that surrounds this issue. And it really is scary on a lot of fronts. because people are reading into it things way beyond what it's intended for. And it's like if you ever listen to a fortune teller, all you ever listen to is the parts you like. And usually it's very vague and nebulous. And that's how they make their money. They give you answers that anybody with a little bit of, 2, 3 questions could figure out on their own. So anyway, there's a big problem. Um, if there's places to protest, you can protest in front of, in their case, the White House on the lawn. You can protest in Canada on Parliament House Park, or you can protest in front of an MP's, or in their case, a congressman's or a senator's office. That's all legitimate. But in front of their homes, that is not on. And yet here we have it. The leading lawmaker in the world, arguably, is turning a blind eye to it. And that should be terrifying to everybody.
Well, I don't know, Nick, in fairness, that it's against the law to demonstrate in front of their private homes. There may be some trespassing issues in that, but and I'm not condoning it. I think it's atrocious for that kind of a demonstration to happen in front of anybody's private home. Look, these guys are Supreme Court justices in the United States. Whether that's the position that they are in now, they could be senior political leaders. They could be other types of community leaders. It's really wrong to invade their private space this way, and to put not just the individuals that are the target of the protest, but more importantly, the innocent bystanders, the neighbors, the kids, the family, the wives, the husbands. I think it's just fundamentally wrong, whether it's against the law or not. And I'm not sure it is. But you know what? I can't. Let me actually just go back to your comment about Trudeau. Why is he bringing this up now? Well, because he's making a calculation that it's good politics. Let's find another way to vilify the right, conservatives, or pro-lifers, in a way, in an attempt to secure the votes, and the support of people out there who are somewhat euphemistically called low information voters, who are going to be scared by the rhetoric of the prime minister. And I think that's a dangerous game he's playing, because you foment the kind of fear that he's promoting now with this. And I go back to the truckers. Same thing. More recently, although the prime minister himself didn't say anything about it, but last weekend or 2 weekends ago here in Ottawa, we had the Rolling Thunder, the bike
Right.
motorcyclists coming through and demonstrating on the weekend in support of freedom and against arbitrary restrictions, mandates, censorship, attacks on free speech, etc. So, that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of game that the left is playing. That's the kind of game that the prime minister is playing and his colleagues. And I think it's a very dangerous game. Look, abortion is a very, very difficult, from a policy point of view, very challenging, very complicated subject.
Yeah.
I think that abortion is wrong. Perhaps abortion is not wrong in the case of saving a mother's life. So if we're concerned about the health of the mother, but there's always that open question: how do you deal with it in law? If you pass a law against it, are you going to criminalize it? Are you going to put doctors in jail? Are you going to put mothers in jail who've had abortions? I don't have answers to those questions. I'm pro-life, but I recognize the complexity and the sensitivity of the issue, and I truly wish that on both sides, but particularly on the left, that they would show some rhetorical restraint, and really recognize it for what it is. I mean, look, irrespective of your view about whether or not a mother has a right to abort her unborn child, let's at least all agree that we're talking about unborn or preborn children.
Right.
And whether you consider that a crime or not, at a minimum, let's all agree that it's a tragedy that we accept that in our society. Again, irrespective of what the law is, etc. One other interesting little tidbit, a piece of trivia on the subject of abortion in Canada, anyway, and that is that abortion was not made illegal. That is to say, it was not included in the criminal code until 1869, I think it was. So, interestingly enough, before including it in the criminal code, abortions occurred, but they were very rare because they were very socially unacceptable. And I think people
Right.
have to, irrespective again of what the law is, I think that a very important thing for pro-life Canadians to do is to really help people to understand that there's the very real moral dimension to this whole question. Again, whatever the law says about it.
Well, according to Craig, he posted in the chat room about whether or not it's legal to protest in front of a judge's house. A statute enacted in 1950 states that it is illegal with the intent of influencing any judge by picketing in or near a building or residence occupied or used by that judge. So it's
Okay,
clearly
now is
against
that,
their criminal code.
well, yeah, is that in Canada or is that in the United
Oh,
States?
that's in the
I'm
States.
curious to know. Yeah. So we may very well have laws that way. Look, even if it's not against the law, it's forget about it being just in bad taste. I mean, you don't want you don't want to have your judges subject to that kind of mob pressure. It's just wrong. It really undermines the integrity of the judicial process. And so, again, I'm not talking about the law, what the law is. I'm not talking about what the law should be. Um, uh, but I think that people who live in a free society that depend on the independence of the judiciary have to respect the independence of the judiciary, and the idea of having, protesting in front of them, their homes or their places of or offices, etc., in order to try to influence the decision, I think is wrong in every case. Again, irrespective of whether or not it's against the law.
Yeah, true. Now, I want to point out to Laurentian View, Terry, we are going to get into Andrea Horwath and the provincial election and all that stuff. So we'll answer your question. It's just we'll do it, in probably the next segment or so. So because
If
it's
we
a great
remember,
question. What's
if
that?
if if we remember, Nick.
Well, it's there in comments. I just have to look at
Okay,
it.
you just have to go back and they'll just
That's
have
right.
to remind you at some point in time.
That's right. So, because it's a great question, and I think it deserves, as the history guy would say, it deserves to be remembered. Anyway, the other part about this, Joseph, is how absolutely uncontrolled the rage is around this.
Yeah,
It's like, look, folks, look, watching the different news outlets in the United States cover this story, you get a wide variety of opinions. Well, not really. I should take that back. You don't get a wide variety of opinions. You've got 2 points of view.
right.
And the point of view that I think is the most sane one is the one that says it's not going to change whether or not you can get an abortion if you want one. If you're, if you are a person or a woman who has decided that that's the route she wants to go, it's just going to change who legislates it. It returns it to the state senates and state House of Representatives. So the
Right.
people who are accountable to the voter have to make a law on it, and they will have to abide by the will of the people. And if that really annoys the Democrats in the White House, too bad, because
Yeah,
that's the way representative democracy is supposed to work.
yeah. The reality, Nick, is that you're going to get returning this question to individual states in the United States. The result is going to be that some states are going to make it more difficult
That's
to
right.
have abortions. Some states might outlaw abortions at all, entirely. Again, except perhaps in the case of
Well, if you have a
the
fallopian
health of
pregnancy
the
or something
mother.
like that, yeah.
Okay, some states are not going to restrict abortion at all. So it is important. We don't have a dog in this hunt. This is for Americans to decide. This is an
Well,
issue for
apparently, according to
their
Trudeau,
courts,
we do.
etc. But I think it's important for us as Canadians to really have I think a reasonable perspective on exactly what is going on in the United States. Nobody is outlawing abortion. What they're doing, the Supreme Court is basically saying, look, the federal government is not going to make a law, and the courts are not going to make a law. We're going to leave this up to the states. And look, some people would say that it shouldn't even be a question of legislating. Abortion is wrong, and so how could you have legislation that says that it's okay? That's democracy. In democracy, you're going to have decisions that you agree with, and you're going to have decisions that you disagree with. But it's really important that we respect the process, whether it's in the United States or it's here in Canada. And for pity's sake, people, get the information that make sure that the things that you're opposed to are in fact real. You have to look, it's critically important in any healthy democracy that voters get informed properly about what they're voting on. And that's a real problem in our democracy here in Canada. And I strongly suspect it's a real problem in the United States as well.
Well, it's obvious it is based on the reaction to the repealing of Roe v. Wade. Now, Christina makes a great point.
They haven't done anything yet.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter whether they think it's under threat and they're going nuts about it.
Yeah,
that's the whole reason that's the whole reason why they want to protest, to try to change their minds before it gets announced on June 2nd. Now, Christina makes a good point brings up a question in the comment section. She says, didn't Morgentaler enhance some of the abortion movement back then? Did he not have Toronto clinics? I think the answer to that is yes.
I don't recall whether there were any clinics in Toronto at the time. There were some clinics that he had tried to open, and the law on the clinics was sort of all over the place. But the Morgentaler decision in 1988 was based on interestingly enough, on the criminal code provisions against abortion that were inserted into the criminal code when in 1968 or 1969 under Pierre Trudeau, when he was the justice minister. So up until that time, abortions were illegal in Canada. And under Trudeau, what he did was he basically said, look, what we're going to do is we're going to allow abortions, but interestingly enough, we're going to allow abortions. In order to have an abortion, you have to go before a panel of doctors, and you have to explain what the problem here is. And essentially, the idea was that we're going to have abortions when the health of the mother is in danger. Okay.
Yep.
That was really the intent, and it's just interesting that was Pierre Trudeau's Justin Trudeau's father that brought that around. Anyway, there were a lot of problems with the way that the new law was being enforced inequitably across the country, etc. And the Supreme Court struck down the law in 1988, but it's important. This is really important. Okay, and again, I'm not making any judgments here, Nick. I'm just saying it's important to understand the facts. Okay, and the fact is that the decision in Morgentaler in 1988, the Supreme Court invited Parliament to write a new abortion law. Okay, they didn't say women have a constitutional right to abortion, and full stop, end of story. So this was the Mulroney government at the time, passed, designed and wrote new legislation that had passed the House of Commons. Now I stand to be corrected on this. I want to say in 1990, but it didn't pass the Senate. It tied when it got to the Senate. And so the way Parliament works is that the Speaker, whether it's in the House of Commons or the Senate,
Breaks the tie.
breaks the tie. And the tradition is that the Speaker will always vote in favor of maintaining the status quo. So the status quo at that time was that there was no legislation on abortion, and so the Speaker at that time voted against the legislation, and as a consequence, the bill died in the Senate, and nobody has taken it up since then. And that's the situation that we have now. We have no law on abortions, but it's important to know that we don't have a Supreme Court ruling that states that women have a constitutional right to abortion. That argument could be made, and there are some arguments that were made and eventually ruled on in the Supreme Court that have some impact on the whole question of abortion. But look, again, this is a very divisive issue. It's a very controversial, and it's a very difficult issue. And if I was to make a recommendation to people on all sides of this question, it would be to please understand. Let's all agree that abortion is in every case a tragedy, and whether it's legal or illegal, what the penalties are if we make it illegal, all of those are separate questions. But in every case, having abortions is really quite tragic. And ultimately, one of the reasons that we have so many abortions in this country, is because it's become kind of socially acceptable. And one has to ask the question, at the risk of inciting some of our viewers and listeners, in this day and age, with so many contraceptive options, and I know that there are religious groups out there that are against using contraception for a number of theological reasons, and I respect that. But if you're going to have an abortion, then probably you're not opposed to contraception. So my question is, if you're not opposed to contraception, why not take steps to make sure that you don't get pregnant? And then you don't have to worry about the abortion question altogether. I mean, maybe I'm way off base when I ask a question like that. I don't know. But it just seems to me pretty straightforward. If you don't want to risk having a baby, if you don't want to risk getting pregnant, and it's not just women, for men too. If you don't want to risk getting a woman pregnant,
there's an old saying.
How crude do you want me to be? Keep
Well,
it
look,
in your
it's
pants.
simple. Joseph, you can sum it up in this sentence. If you don't ever want to have to worry about having an abortion, make your decision before you get into bed, not after.
Right. Good point.
It's really very simple. Chastity works every time it's tried. And for those who say, "Oh, you don't ever want anybody to have sex," what are you, nuts? I got 8 kids. Don't tell me that. I just want people to understand that that comes with a tremendous responsibility, and you can't just fritter it away and say, "Well, I can do what I want when I want." Yeah, but there's a price to pay. There's no such thing as a free lunch.
Nick, I like to point out, for all of you guys that believe in Darwinian evolution, newsflash, we're supposed to have evolved beyond the apes.
Yeah,
so can we stop acting like apes and pretending that we can't control ourselves? We're human beings. We know what the consequence of sexual relations is. Take steps to prevent pregnancy. That's all. And then the abortion question goes away. When you look at it that way, Nick, it's really hard for me to not make the observation that abortion on demand, except in cases, again, where there are going to be cases, exceptional cases, where people's health are in danger, even people's mental health might be seriously affected by it. I'm not trying to make an absolute statement here, but it just seems to me that in many cases, it's the whole abortion movement is just one more example of baby boomers being irresponsible. It just seems to me to be a very selfish act to terminate the life of a child pre-birth because you don't want to have the burden of raising a child, and it's a burden. Okay, it's no question about it. It's a responsibility. At the same time that you don't want to be responsible for taking steps to ensure that you're not getting pregnant in the first place, or that you're not impregnating a woman. Okay, because let's face facts. This isn't just a woman's issue. Maybe the abortion question might be framed that way, but the idea of getting pregnant is not just a woman's issue. It takes two
It does.
people to
That's
create a
right.
baby.
That's right. Now, Joseph, when I look at this, you've got this issue. You've got, I'm just casting a net over everything that's been going on over the last decade. Our history is being undermined and revised. Our institutions are being attacked, and all of them, there's not one I can think of that hasn't come under some kind of attack, whether it be our political system, our judicial system, our system of the way we, our court system. You've got people going after, they're pulling down statues and just every single thing about our culture. The traditional family has been under assault for years. I would say that the West in general is at war, and it's a long time taking to taken for people to wake up to that fact. This isn't just a bunch of spot fires. I think there is something behind this, pushing this agenda to undermine the West, discredit it, and destroy it. Now, I'm not going to assign any particular group or entity to that, but it's certainly from our perspective, it looks like we are under siege. When you have, when you have uh, people saying, well, an abortion's my right. Well, show me where it is. And it goes in one ear and out the other, right? Or when you say the traditional family is the best way to raise children. It's not the only way, and not everybody will ever reach that standard because life is what it is. You're going to have people who are, through broken families or mixed marriages or things like that. But the traditional family, one man, one woman, living under the same roof, raising the children that they created. Okay, that's my definition of a traditional family, is the single best, and it's what we should strive for. But if you say that, you're
Right.
attacked for being old-fashioned, mischievous. You put out. Some would even call it racist. I don't know how they call it racist, but there's people out there who would. So when you look at this, I think we need to change our focus and understand it's not just the Supreme Court that's the Roe v. Wade decision. It's not just what's going on in schools. It's not just what our universities have turned into or what our political policy. It's all of it. And when you put it all into a big stew and you stir it up, you have this concoction designed to destroy Western culture and everything that it stands for.
Yeah.
And I think people need to start looking at it from that perspective.
Pat Buchanan, who ran as a third-party candidate for the presidency, I believe in 1988, gave a speech where he talked about a culture war. And, there are lots of things that I did not and do not see eye to eye with Pat Buchanan on. But on that, I think he was spot on. I think what we have is a culture war. And if you want to be even more precise, let's call it a culture Cold War or a cold civil war in Western society, where we're not shooting at each other, but certainly we're certainly talking past one another, and it's very, to me, I find it very distressing because I live and breathe in the world of professional politics. I love what we do. Having these discussions, I like interacting with people, whether they agree with me or not. I think that's the essence of democracy. That's the essence of a free society, and I see that more and more challenged by not just official government policy, but really people's attitudes. And let's face facts, okay, Nick? Official government policy, to a very large degree, is shaped by public attitudes. And so, it's very easy for us to point fingers at someone like Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government and say, oh, you're censoring this and you're doing that and that. But I think it's really important to understand that there's a large body of people out there, and it may be even growing, that actually want this kind of censorship. They want this kind of control, and I've come to the conclusion, when people talk about the government not being in the business of enforcing morality or imposing morality on the population, I shrug my shoulders. I go, yeah, I probably could live with that if it was true. But what we have is a government that's imposing more and more an alternative morality. So it's not like people are saying, well, people should have the right to decide for themselves. That's an open question on many subjects. Okay, but what we're seeing is the emergence and the enforcement of another definition of right and wrong, and it's being imposed on people, and I think against their will. And so, what at one point in time you and I might have considered to be wrong is now considered to be right, and to be opposed to it is considered to be wrong. And now, if you're opposed to what is now right, you're punished for it. That's not amorality. That's not taking a neutral position. As I say, that's my big problem right now. Is it's as though we're trying to reinvent our sense of of what is and is not right and wrong, and our sense of morality, and where the state is more and more imposing this alternative morality.
And you're the last ones who
I
should
think it's
ever
very
do it.
dangerous, because, just to finish the thought, because I know we have to go to a break, Nick, but I think it's very dangerous because so much of what we've built in Western society, the freedoms that we have, the institutions that embody those freedoms, are based on sound foundations, sound moral foundations, a sense of what's right and what's wrong, and the belief that there is even such a thing as right and wrong.
Joseph, you're right. We have to take a break. So we're going to do that right now. Stick around, folks. We'll have more on the Nick and Joe Show right after this.
We all know that climate change is real. But with countries like China and India failing to do their part, what Canadians need now more than ever is a Made in Canada climate change plan. A real plan that responds to the real-world needs of Canadians. A balanced plan that supports responsible economic growth and strengthens our essential infrastructure. A responsible plan that protects our natural environment and ensures that all Canadians enjoy the blessings of clean air, clean land, and clean water for generations to come. It's time for Canadian politicians to show real leadership in the world, putting partisanship and ideology aside. It's time for a sensible climate plan. We're the International Climate Science Coalition Canada, and we're ready to help. To learn more, visit our website, icsc-canada.com.
Welcome back to the Nick and Joe Show. I'm Joe, he's Nick, and he's busy sitting there reading on his cell phone. He had no idea we were back.
No, you're right. I didn't. I was answering a question from my wife.
Why do they call them?
She sent me a text.
Why do they call them, Nick? Why do they call them smartphones?
Because only dummies use them. I don't know.
I don't know. I like to think I'm smarter than my smartphone is, but maybe I'm not. Now here's the actually, this is a really interesting topic, and and not to dive into it, but this is just another example of the perversion of language. Okay,
Oh,
it's not a
brother.
smartphone. It happens. I mean, it's a phone. It's a machine. Machines are not smart or stupid or
They're
intelligent.
inanimate.
Okay, I know I'm nitpicking here. And for those of you who are in the chat room, uh, what is a nit? Why do they call it nitpicking? Do you know the answer to that, Nick, without giving it away?
Okay. Are you asking them or are you asking me?
Okay, so no, I'm asking if you know the answer. I don't want you to give the
Yes,
answer
I
away.
do.
Just a yes or no.
I do. Yes.
Okay. So you know what we're so I have to say this, Nick. It's for everyone who is watching us now, who is participating or just lurking. Okay, we have our lurkers.
Yes, we do.
It's really, I have to say that it's very a great honor that that people are watching us instead of tuning into the Conservative Party leadership debate, which is going on now as we speak in Edmonton. And I don't have a window open on it, and I perhaps should. I'll go back and watch it afterwards, but it should be quite interesting. Did you catch last week's debate at
A little bit of it.
I'm sorry.
I caught a little bit of Roman Baber, and I caught a little bit of Pierre going after Jean Charest.
Online. Did you have, and this is, I guess, a question for our viewers as well and listeners, but, did you have, Nick, did you have an opinion of what little you saw?
Yeah. First of all, I thought a lot of people blamed or after Pierre. And I think I know when you have these kinds of leadership debates, there's certain camps and they're trying to push their guy. It's like the coach in the corner for a boxing ring, right? So maybe there was some of that, but they were saying that, oh, he's just a one-trick pony. That's all he ever does. He goes after somebody, won't let up. Well, that's what people like about him, first of all. And Baber, I thought, had the best grasp of what we're actually fighting. And he said, I don't know if he said this then I can't remember exactly what, excuse me, his comments were based on the event. But he says, look, this is communism. This is Marxism. This is what we're fighting. And it's so refreshing to hear somebody like that. This is what I like about Ron DeSantis in the States. He's not afraid to stand up and tell it like it is and, punch back when he gets attacked at. But with Pierre and Charest, Pierre just kept calling, you're a liberal, and Charest said he went after him like a dog with a bone. That's Pierre's style. And if you know that, then that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But when you have somebody like that going after who he probably thinks is his greatest threat, then I think he's probably playing it pretty smart. People like that no nonsense attitude. They like the fact that he will keep insisting until he gets an answer or it becomes obvious they don't want to answer the question. So yes, I agree with Craig. Charest is a liberal. And he, just because he wears a blue tie doesn't change that. Same thing I feel about Doug Ford right now.
Oh, don't sugarcoat it. Give it to us straight. What is your view of the Ontario election so far?
Okay,
I didn't catch any of the debate. There was a debate last night, I believe, a leaders' debate.
I didn't catch that either. But the thing, there's a couple of things that have jumped out at me
up there, but that's par for the course these days, I guess.
Yeah, what jumped out at me over the opening days of the campaign. First of all, Ford is pulling away. He is now at 39 or 40%, which is majority territory. And, on one hand, that's good because it keeps the other two away from the throne, and Del Duca and Horwath. On the other, but on the other side of that coin, how much better is he? Because his handling of the COVID crisis was a complete and utter disaster. He's spending money like a liberal, like he wants to put $1 billion into healthcare, and he wants to put get the ring of fire going again, which is in and of itself is not a bad thing. He wants to do Highway 413. Well, okay, maybe that needs to be done. But the question he won't answer is who's going to pay for it. Now, if he was a true conservative, he would be able to say, well, okay, we need to move money from this envelope to that envelope. We may have to close a couple of offices here at Queen's Park and lay some people off or put them on early retirement or whatever, because we need to readjust our funding model rather than just keep raising taxes. And the other question I would have for him is, if cutting taxes by 11 cents a liter is a good idea on July 1st, why is it not a good idea now? This is where I think he's really falling down, because think of the mileage he could get from a political point of view if he cut gas taxes right now. He could go into the campaign saying, look, not only did I say I would, I did. And I'm trying everything I can to help Canadians or people from Ontario. I hate the word Ontarians. It sounds so clumsy. But the people from Ontario get through this period of really high gas prices. And I'm going to suspend the carbon tax. I'm going to cut the gas tax everywhere and anywhere I can down to the bare bones so that people don't have to pay $2 a liter for gas. But he didn't do that. He made it a part of, well, if you want it, you better elect me, which is the oldest stupid game in the book. If it was good then, if it's going to be good then, it's probably good now. So that's thing. But the part that really set my head on fire, and fortunately, she's never going to be able to implement this. If I can just find the right story. That's Del Duca. Where is it? The story is that Andrea Horwath is blaming. Oh, here it is. Okay, I have it here. Let me read you just a couple of paragraphs from the story. It's from, you can find it over at Post Millennial. It's a story out of Canadian News. Anyway, the Ontario NDP platform includes a paragraph that addresses anti-Black racism, mentioning sickle cell anemia as one example of how Black Canadians face more racism. Oh my God, are you out of your mind? She goes on to say, we'll establish a systemic review of the reality that Black Canadians are disproportionately impacted by HIV/AIDS, mental health issues, heart disease, hypertension, sickle cell. She's playing the race card in Canada. Like, look, we have a lot of problems in Canada, but racial tension isn't one of them. Yes, I'm not trying to say that there is no issues of racism. No society's free of it that I'm aware of. You're always going to have idiots and boneheads who think the color of the skin is the only thing that matters. But for her to come out in Canada and say that is absolutely, that's what people are worried about, right? I mean, not the high cost of groceries, not the high cost of gas, not the ability to pay the hydro bill. In other words, the cost of living. That never enters her head. She's more worried about what it is, the Black communities being just, you want to look at her and say, shut up and sit down. You're just an idiot. And I hate to talk that way, but what else can you say to this kind of nonsense?
Well, Nick, the very fact that she's pointing to presumably the higher incidence of sickle cell anemia in the Black community as an example of racism is, I think, the exception that proves the rule, as the saying goes. The fact is that while there is such a thing as racism, there is such a thing as individual racists, and nobody's going to be silly enough to say that there is no racism, period, in Canada. People are people, and when you're talking about people, you're going to have people with stupid ideas that the color of your skin makes a difference, okay? But the fact that this is her example I think is pretty good evidence that we're actually pretty good in this country. And I I don't need to have evidence. I know we're pretty good in this country. There are some issues. Are the issues systemic? I don't think so. And what are we going to do about these issues? Are we going to create um, uh, what are essentially racist rules and racist new anti-racism protocols, which are, because they're based on race, racist themselves, albeit for, I guess, benevolent reasons? So, look, the fact is that you shouldn't be treating people differently because of the color of their skin. Period. Full stop. Okay. It's and when you differentiate between people and you base that differentiation on the color of their skin, that is racism. And you may be doing it for benevolent reasons. You may be doing it for all of the wonderful, noble reasons in the world, but you're still teaching people that it makes a difference what color your skin is. That the law should be different from one person for one person over another person because of the color of their skin. And that is the definition of racism, in my view. And so, look, the best way to get rid of racism, if you can get rid of it, I'm not sure that it's possible to get rid of it, is to call it what it is: stupid, idiotic, and people who treat other people different because of the color of their skin. At least in law, it's just a stupid idea,
Well, I
and
think that
there's no
Morgan
place for it in our
Freeman,
society. And so just call it out. Call it out. Don't pass laws against it and
I
make it into a big government and systemic thing. Just call it out.
I
Stupid.
think I think that Morgan Freeman really hit the nail on the head in that William Wallace interview on 60 Minutes a few years ago. And he said, if you want to end racism, just stop talking about it. Make it a non-issue. So, in other words, you're basically doing what you're suggesting,
Yeah.
because it's only an issue if somebody brings it up. Like for me, I don't care. Doesn't bother me in the least. I've got friends from pretty much every race on the planet, and it never crosses my mind. It doesn't bother me. And I know that most of the people that I know fall into that category. I mean, we just don't care because it's the integrity that somebody brings to the table that matters, not what they look like and not where they come from. It's the content of your character, to quote Martin Luther King. These kind of things matter, not what somebody looks like. I mean, you and I both know different people who of different races, Joseph. We know them as in common, between us, that we've encountered in our time together. And it's not it's the same story. We don't worry about it because it's not an issue. So Morgan, I think, had it right. Just stop talking about it. And the only people who ever bring it up are those who think they have something to gain or somehow can, by calling you a racist. And you know something? That term, I think, is really getting old. People are sick and tired of hearing it, that everything's racist. Everything's like this whole Andrea Horwath thing. Yes, the article's from 2 years ago, but she said it and she meant it. And like, it's, I haven't heard her say, "Oh, gee, I shouldn't have said that." She doesn't apologize. And let me go back to that question that we were supposed to answer earlier. That, where is it now? Here it is. Laurentian Vuteri said, he says, does it sound like the height of hypocrisy that Horwath and Del Duca want Stephen Lecce to resign, want him to resign and withdraw because of some slave auction event while in university, but don't demand the same thing of Trudeau for going blackface a number of times? Look, I don't know anything about this slave auction. Maybe it was just in jest. You know how sometimes you'll have people get arrested and put in a cage and, by the police as a fundraiser. Maybe it was something like that. We don't know, or at least I don't know. But Trudeau, no, I'm sorry. That was blatant racism, and he did it more than once. He's never apologized for it that I know of, certainly not in any way that carries any weight. And Andrew Horwath and Del Duca, they don't seem to have a problem with it. And doesn't that make them more the racist than anybody else?
No, I think it makes them hypocrites.
Yeah, well, it certainly does that too.
I
But
don't look. I don't think I don't think that Justin Trudeau is racist. I don't think that the blackface thing that he did was racist. You know, maybe 100 years ago or 80 years ago or whatever, if people were doing it, maybe that they were doing it for racist reasons. I don't know. I wasn't around back then. And one thing I've learned in my life is not to judge people retrospectively on things like that. But I don't think that Justin Trudeau is a racist. I think he's a fool. I think he's a shallow fool. But and I think that kind of tomfoolery when you're in university, I mean, you know, you used to refer to people who were in college and university as college men and college women. Okay, now they're just kids, and they act like kids, you know, and they demand to be treated to a very
But
large
doesn't it make
degree
sense
like
though?
kids.
Wouldn't it make sense though, given that scenario? And I don't want to dwell too long on it, but Justin Trudeau has been shown several times in blackface. Now, you're right. That was a big part of vaudeville back in the 30s. That a white guy would come out with, blackface and great big white circles around his eyes and mimic black people. Okay, and everybody thought it was funny.
Okay,
They had a sense of humor. But today, in the last 20, 30 years, that attitude has gone away. And when people see that now, like, look at the fact, if you wanted to dress up at Halloween as a Native American, okay, or an Indian, and go out and play cowboys and Indians, you're immediately labeled a racist because people are so
cultural
hypersensitive.
misappropriation.
Yeah, and then cultural
Is the
misappropriation.
term they're using.
Never mind the fact that they're just having fun. Like nobody really takes it seriously except those looking for things to make them offended. So
Right.
wouldn't it behoove the prime minister then to come forward and say, look, that was in my university years. It was stupid. I apologize if it offended anybody.
Yeah.
It's not who I am. If he'd have come
But he
out and said
never
that,
did
but
that,
has
did
he
he?
ever said it though?
I haven't heard. Maybe he did and I missed it, but one would think that if the prime minister came out and made an abject apology, I don't
You
know.
would think
Now
we'd
that I'm
know about
thinking
it.
about it, maybe he did say something or other about, I apologize, and there
Well,
might
if
have
he
been an
did, good,
apology in
fine.
there
Then,
somewhere. But one wonders why he would do it in the first place. I mean, it's just such a silly thing to do. And it's almost like Animal House, the movie, has taken
yeah.
over the whole post-secondary culture that people think, oh, this is the way we have to act, and if we're not, well, we're not, we're not cool or we're hypocrites or whatever. I mean, people can act decently. Why do they have to be? Goes back to this whole idea about an alternate morality. Okay, it's like if you're not acting like an idiot, okay, then you're an idiot. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh my God. Well, the world has gone mad, Joseph. The world has just gone mad. Now,
Hasn't it though? I don't know what
yeah.
else to say about the whole thing.
Now, you know
But
what? But to go back to the Horwath thing, look, for one thing, what you say online or what you post online stays there forever. And your political opponents. And in 2020 wasn't all that long ago. It's only 2 years.
true.
So the internet was around. People have been digging through people's, political opponents. They would go digging through their opponents' backgrounds and bringing up things that they could go, oh, a gotcha moment. Did she never think that was going to happen to her? That, saying that?
I don't think
Did she ever even think for a second how stupid that sounds?
To you and me, it sounds stupid, and I think objectively speaking, it's a silly thing to say anyway. But I don't think that she thinks when you're asking that question, didn't she realize this? No, I don't think she did. I think that she's talking about something that she sincerely believes in, and that people out there who listen to her, follow her, perhaps largely sincerely believe in as well. So I don't think I think the problem here, Nick, it's not like hypocrisy. I know nobody's accused her of being hypocritical here on this particular issue, or maybe somebody has, but the point I'm making here is that she really believes in what she's saying. And again, this comes back to what I'm saying: these are dangerous ideas, and they need to be called out.
They sure are.
And not censored, not censored.
Now I want to set
out.
the record. I want to take a second, Joseph, and set the record straight. John found for me an article, and he highlighted the right part. The Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau apologized after photos surfaced showing him wearing brown and blackface as a young man. That was dated September 19th, 2019. So he has apologized. All right, fine. If you're willing to do that, and if it's sincere, which we have no way of knowing whether it is or not, then fine. I'll cut him a little slack for that. I still don't think he's he's a lousy prime minister, but let's give the man his due. Probably out of public pressure, he came out and said, okay, that was stupid. But what about Andrew Horwath?
Okay. Well, again, there in the case of Justin Trudeau and blackface, okay, there's no defending that. There's no saying, okay, well, I did it because this is in the case of this sickle cell anemia business and black people, it's she believes it. She believes that this is an indication of systemic racism, I suppose, in our healthcare system or whatever.
Wouldn't that, though, give people pause when she says something like that and clearly believes it, that they say, wait a minute, anybody who believes that is not fit to hold public office?
Well, you and I may think that, but I think there are a lot of people who agree with her, would look at that and go, yeah, that's something we should be concerned with. Number one. And number two, going back to what I mentioned very briefly in the first segment tonight, Nick, and that is, the whole issue of what we call low information voters, voters out there who go in and they vote for the party they choose because it's the party that they like. They like the logo, they like the leader or whatever, and they don't really
shallow
think too
reason
much
to
about
vote
the
for
policies, well, yeah, then that's one of the downsides to democracy. I'm not speaking against democratic government or democratic elections, but I believe it was Winston Churchill who said that two things he said. The first thing is something to the effect of if you want to see the problems with democracy or something along those lines, it just takes a 1 minute
conversation with the average voter,
right? But then he went on, of course, in other circumstances, to say that democracy is absolutely the worst form of government, except for all the others.
For all the rest, yeah. Let me just, before we go to the break,
there's a lot of wisdom in that observation.
Yeah, there is. Let me just go to Chrissy's comment just before we go to the break. She says, again, college days. Weren't we all having fun in college back then? Should not be relevant in the future. Nitpicking at its best. Yes and no. Look, first of all, I accept that he meant the apology. But Chrissy, what you do, when you do things like this, it is a sign of how your character is developing. Now, if you're just going to, and I don't mean to put plumbers down or people, if you're going to a career that's outside public service, okay, fine, nobody cares. But when you want to be the leader of the country, then your character had better be impeccable. And so far, he isn't even close. All right, with that, we'll take a break here on the Nick and Joe Show. We'll be right back after this with more.
We all know that climate change is real. But with countries like China and India failing to do their part, what Canadians need now more than ever is a Made in Canada climate change plan. A real plan that responds to the real-world needs of Canadians. A balanced plan that supports responsible economic growth and strengthens our essential infrastructure. A responsible plan that protects our natural environment and ensures that all Canadians enjoy the blessings of clean air, clean land, and clean water for generations to come. It's time for Canadian politicians to show real leadership in the world, putting partisanship and ideology aside. It's time for a sensible climate plan. We're the International Climate Science Coalition Canada, and we're ready to help. To learn more, visit our website, icsc-canada.com.
Okay, welcome back. There's Nick. Nope, that's Nick's empty chair. There's Nick.
There's Nick.
There's Nick. Welcome back to the Nick and Joe Show. I'm Joe. He's Nick. And I am in my home studio in Ottawa, actually. And Nick is in his home studio in
Killaloo.
Come on, Nick. You can do it. You know where you are. Killaloo,
Oh,
Ontario.
I'm in the broadcast studio in
Killaloo,
Bunker F.
Ontario.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny? I didn't mean to get into this, but we just listed the farm for sale, and it's up on the retail sites at the moment, and it's a real mixed feeling. I got to tell you, we've lived here for 23 years, and there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears on this place, you know. But at the same time, there's just Allison and I now, and it's a big home. It's 2,400 square feet. And it's a big farm. Well, it's a big farm, but it's a farm, 67 acres, and it takes a lot of work to maintain it. And we just decided that it was time to, start a new chapter and let somebody else have the place and raise a family here. I know we certainly did, and we loved it. And to tell you the truth, I never thought I'd leave. I thought they'd drag me out of here in a body bag, feet first. But sometimes things don't go the way you think they're going to go. So it's been a real. Last couple of weeks have been a real mixed bag of emotions, because I love this place. I love working here. I love living here. But at the same time, my wife's in Sioux Lookout, and she's laying the foundation for what we're going to do. Yes, that's right, Laura. That's right. Former home of Tank the horse. Is he still? I'm trying to remember. Yes, he's still here. Well, what's left of him is. We buried him on the farm. So he's, I miss that horse. But anyway, it's going to be a whole new chapter. Well, it's not going to affect you and I at all. We'll be able to do it from Sioux Lookout as well as we can here. But when they put that sign up at the end of the driveway, I didn't know whether I was going to laugh or cry, because on one hand, it's a great relief. And on the other hand, when you pull in the driveway now, the only animals here are not Buzzy and Woody, Willie and the other dog. I can't think of her name right now. Willie and not Lacey, the little white one back there. I can't remember her name. Finley. That's it. Finley. Finley and Lacey. And that's it. All the other animals are gone. And it's quiet. And boy, I'll tell you, that's taking some used to. And the black flies came out to greet me yesterday. That was fun. So we're just wrapping up. I'm selling the tractor and cleaning out the buildings and all that stuff, and before I can head back up north. So that has nothing to do with anything we were going to talk about. I just felt a little melancholy and decided I'd share it with people.
Oh, Nick, we're gonna miss your farm, Nick. We're gonna miss it.
You're going to miss it.
We're gonna miss driving by that boat.
Yeah, well, I got to deal with that too. That's something else I got to deal with. Anybody want a
should burn-
36-foot wooden cabin cruiser?
Why don't you just
That's
burn
in. The problem is there's a couple of gas tanks in it, and I don't know how much fuel is in them. And there's a guy who locally here who's got a high hoe and a dump truck, and we'll probably just get him to cut it up in pieces and drag it away. And it breaks my heart because it's one of three. It's a 1948 Taylor Craft built by J.J. Taylor in Toronto, and he built it for a doctor or something like that. We have the somewhere we have the original video of the day it was launched. And there's a young lady, probably 13 or 14, went to break a bottle of champagne on the bow. She couldn't swing it hard enough. It bounced off, so you had to hit it again. But they went through the locks with it. It spent a lot of time on Lake Nipissing. I've recently run into somebody who owned it for a while because it's passed through several hands before it got to me. And it just breaks my heart to see at the end of the driveway because it's such a beautiful boat. I just never did have the money to be able to do with it. And I got in way over my head on that one.
On the boat, you mean?
Yeah. I thought I could do it myself. Then I started and I went, no. You need to be a lot smarter and a lot better with your hand tools than you are to be able to pull
I'm just actually checking out the news to see what else is going on tonight. Here's something interesting. So the Freedom Convoy, the truckers,
yes,
who spent some time demonstrating in Ottawa, primarily in Ottawa, but not just in Ottawa, here in Canada. While they were doing what they were doing in the wintertime, they were taking a lot of video footage, and they've produced a documentary which is going to have its worldwide release this coming Sunday.
Oh, really?
I believe it's 6:00. Yeah, and they've sent me a trailer for it, and some background information. And what I'll do, actually, if you'll bear with me, I'll get the information, and maybe, John, if you're listening in, John, if I email you a link to the trailer, maybe during the next break we could play it. It's about 90 seconds long.
Yep,
Is that
no problem.
possible?
Yep, you've got my email address. Pass that along, and I'll get that wrapped up and ready for you.
So
Now,
okay, so stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We'll during the next
we'll do that shortly.
We'll play that trailer for you, and it should be really interesting. And it's I haven't seen the documentary, but I know the people who put it together, and I without having seen it, I still feel very comfortable in recommending that people actually take the time to watch it, because what it will do is it will put to rest, I believe, permanently, the accusation of this demonstration and this protest having been a group of radicals, racists, etc. It certainly from the people that I know who were there, and I spent a considerable amount of time with a number of the leaders at the beginning of when they first arrived in Ottawa, and certainly the characterization of the Prime Minister and of the press, and this here now that we're talking about this was we have even tonight thrown stones, pointed fingers at the Prime Minister for the way he characterized this particular group, and the protesters, etc. But I think that the real failing here, Nick, it was a failure, a colossal failure of responsible journalism. Because what happened here is the Prime Minister said what he said. One or two reporters who probably weren't even there reported his remarks, and then all of a sudden that became the narrative. And this is an issue that it really does bother me. I think that one of the important elements of a viable, robust, healthy democracy is an independent and responsible journalism estate. I can't remember now if they call it the fourth estate or the fifth estate or whatever, but journalism is really important. Responsible journalism. And I see more and more in Western societies, and certainly here in Canada, perhaps here in Canada more so than any of the other Western countries, is a complete abandonment of the ethics, the sense of responsibility, the sense of duty that journalists have, not just to the community, but to democracy itself. And what do I mean by that? I mean that looking at what happened around the truckers, it was obvious that many of the stories, if not most of the stories, were being written by people who call themselves journalists who never ever came and attended the event. So what they were essentially doing was they were writing as their own reports what they were reading other journalists had written. And even those original journalists hadn't even been on the site. They were just repeating what the prime minister said. So that became
that's lazy journalism at its best.
It's and that's what it is. That hits the nail right on the head, Nick. It's lazy journalism. And when you have lazy journalism, when you have that quality of journalism, who is going to hold the government to account? The opposition parties? Okay, maybe. But opposition parties have to be held to account also. And so this is something that that we really have a problem with in this country. And it's not just, because I know a lot of my conservative friends are going to go, well, what do you expect? The CBC is an arm, it's a state broadcaster. They're going to, I don't, the CBC, I don't think the CBC's reporting is tainted because it happens to be a public broadcaster. And I don't believe that any of the other broadcasters or journalists are tainted because they have some sort of subsidy from the government. I think that there's potentially the appearance of conflict of interest, but the real problem is the quality of journalism. And that's got nothing to do with who's paying your paycheck. That's just, journalists aren't even accountable to themselves as individual journalists anymore.
Well, this is the COVID
to that. Okay. So I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, but that's a very serious problem in our democracy.
Well, I think what you're dealing with is called the COVID mentality. If I can just file a report from home, there's an old joke in journalism where you can file anything. You just have a form and you put in sources say and witnesses say, and plug in a few keywords to fit the story and file it. And you never have to type much more than that. So there's that. And I think this COVID only made it worse because they didn't go out and chase stories anymore. There was no, driving across the country or flying across the country to get, be the first one, get the scoop. Everything was done electronically or over the internet. And it's easy, very easy, just to copy what somebody else has said without actually thinking about it if it fits your worldview. Now, according to John, he has your trailer. He has the trailer ready. So, John,
okay.
if you're
that's perfect. I was just about to send something by email, but if he's been able to get it himself, that's great.
He's found it.
So do we want to play it now?
If John's ready, John, you ready? There it is.
Your country's in revolt. Do you know about this? Show this video.
Those who refuse will have to pay a new health contribution.
Ils sont extrémistes, qui ne croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes aussi.
we have one of the biggest revolutions happening. Right now, there's 50,000 truckers and about 1.4 million people headed to the Parliament in Ottawa, and they're going to stay there until Trudeau resigns or they give us back all of our freedoms and rights.
Every overpass is packed with Canadians. Look at us right here. Look at this. God bless Canada. God bless every single one of you truckers and every single one of you Canadians that are supporting this movement. This is not a fringe. We will not be divided. We stand together. We will win this country back.
I was at a point where I was giving up on Canada, and you guys have given me hope. You guys are giving us strength. You guys are keeping us going. And wow, we are one big team, one big national team. The entire world is watching us. I firmly believe this is our last stand, and we are not coming home until you are all free.
The hawking will continue until freedom improves.
What a moment in Canadian history! I love you, Canada!
The small fringe minority holding unacceptable views that they're expressing do not represent the views of Canadians.
In the last 6 years, Trudeau has changed the face of this country. So that's what brought me here.
We're all Canadians, we're all truckers.
CBC show this.
Wow.
Right. So that was sort of like a montage. That wasn't actually the trailer. And John, I just so that you're aware of this, I just emailed you the note I got from the producers. So if you get a chance, take a look at it.
Sure.
Because it does have information also on the release of the video itself. Will be streaming, and it's free. And there's opportunities also when the time comes when people go to the website that people will be able to donate to help to pay for the production and a follow-up documentary as well, a part 2, if you will. So so it's quite an event, and you know, everything that went on around the Freedom Convoy and the events in February and March of this year in Ottawa and in various locations across the country, and not just here in Canada, but it sparked around the world a number of similar protests.
There was a lot of protests everywhere from Helsinki down to Canberra.
The issues that were being confronted.
All right. Well, I'm downloading the right one now. I took a shot. I thought that looked legit.
Sorry?
I said I thought I took a shot in the dark and thought that one looked about right. I'm downloading the right one now. I'll let you guys know when I've got that racked up and ready for you.
Okay, that's great, because that actually what we just watched.
We have time.
Yeah, that what we just watched was pretty powerful in and of itself. And Chrissy, I would love to tell you there's a great fishing story to go with that old boat at the end of the driveway, but if there is, it's not mine. So I have some interesting fishing stories if you want, but not with that boat. As much as it breaks my heart, I would love to.
And Nick has some wonderful ice fishing stories.
I didn't get into ice fishing till this winter. And actually, my wife called me once. She said some things to me this year I never thought I'd ever hear her say. Because I'm sure most people know by now that Allison and I are both studying for our private pilot's license. And I told her I wanted to go after mine. And she said, well, in that case, I'll get mine too. And I looked at her kind of funny because she is not someone who likes flying in private airplanes, small general aviation airplanes. The first time I looked up, she took her up. She was scared out of her mind. She got out and kissed the ground. So, we were working on it. So I said, well, why do you want to get your own license? She said, if you die at the controls, I want to be able to land the plane. I'm not sure if I like that answer or not. And then later on, as the winter got going and the ice thickened up on the lakes, she called me and said, guess what I got? And I said, what did you get? And she said, I got my fishing license. I felt like saying, who are you? And what have you done with my wife? And I hope you never bring that one back because I like this one. So it's been a very interesting transformation. Now she's racing me because she started her own private pilot's license virtual ground school online, and she's trying to race me towards the end. She's at 26%. I'm at a little over 30. And now I got to put my nose to the grindstone and make sure I maintain that gap so she doesn't catch me. Anyway, all right. Apparently, John has that ready. If you want to play it there, Joseph.
Can I make a recommendation?
Sure.
Just take it easy, okay? There's no need to race to the finish line here.
Oh, if I want to stay ahead of my wife, I do.
Okay.
Holy smokes!
All right, let's fire up that trailer then.
Sure, go ahead.
Let's go ahead.
The decision about whether or not to declare a public health emergency of international concern is one I take extremely seriously, and one I'm only prepared to make with appropriate consideration of all the evidence.
That was what it was. It was trying to buy us time, is where that 2 weeks to flatten the curve came from. It was a sincere effort to try to save lives or prevent deaths.
They had actually shut everything down. And I was like, whoa, what's going on here? But honestly, I thought it would be temporary. I didn't think it was going to be anything sustainable.
The idea of locking everybody down for 2 years, that's not part of any response plan.
They're going to kill the very businesses that we depend on to keep the economy going.
And the truckers, they didn't say, we're going to go to Ottawa and demand that we're allowed to travel again across the border. They didn't go there for themselves. They went there for all of us.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Wow, that's a wow. That
okay,
looks
so
great.
That website is truckingforfreedom.com, and as I said earlier, if you go there are a couple of trailers on that website, and you'll be able to watch the video. It should be streaming this Sunday, and I believe it's at 6 p.m. Eastern time, but it's sometime in the late afternoon, early evening. So again, that's truckersforfreedom.com. Check it out, and make sure that you're there to watch the video and spread the word around, because like I said, what this will do is it will put to rest the myth, the monstrous myth of the participants in this demonstration being angry. Well, okay, angry, maybe that's a fair characterization, but violent, law-breaking, it could not have been more opposite than that, Nick. It was a truly inspiring event. the coming together of people from across this country of different races, different linguistic backgrounds, not just truckers, but people coming, families with their kids to participate on weekends, I hesitate to say it because it's going to sound very much like a 1960s left-wing liberal Woodstock moment here, but it was a real love fest. I mean,
Yeah.
people were hugging, and when finally the police moved in, there was no violent resistance whatsoever, and shame on our government for having invoked the Emergencies Act in order to disperse these protesters. Shame on our journalist class for not having had the decency and the integrity to actually go there and talk to the participants and report on what was going on accurately.
There's only one journalism. There's only one journalist. I don't mean to interrupt you with the beginning of my sentence in the middle of yours. But there was only one guy who I normally don't agree with. And he comes from my old station, CFRA, and his name was Evan Solomon. And I got to tip my hat to the guy. He walked down the 2 or 3 blocks from the studio to Wellington Street to the heart of it, took his microphone and went and talked to the truckers and the people who were protesting. So for that, I got to give him credit. Now, it would have been nice had CBC done that, or Global, or CTV, or any other news agency out there. The only one I know of who was doing it regularly was Rebel, and they're almost anathema for a lot of people in anyway. But mainstream media, to go back to your point about lazy journalism, he was the one who went down and actually was interested in what they had to say. Now, like I said, he and I don't agree on very much. He's a lefty and I'm not. But I got to give him kudos for that. The tragedy is he was the only one. And to your point about this is the ultimate, because they had talking points and that's all they wanted to recite. They regurgitated over and over Nazis and it just violence and breaking the law and all that kind of stuff. And it was just plain crap. And there was Evan Solomon in the middle of it all doing what he was supposed to do. Whether you liked his opinion or not wasn't important. The fact that he went down and did it.
And Craig rightly points out, by the way, that Fox News was there as well. So, but the rest of them, we just weren't getting accurate reporting. And it's a puzzle to me. Even those networks that actually sent reporters, for whatever reason, they just weren't interested in reporting the story accurately. And it was, I could tell you, it was very frustrating to the people that were there. Not frustrating because their story wasn't getting out, but because they were being characterized as something other than what they were. It was really quite slanderous, libelous, whatever word you want to use. They were just completely accused of being something that they just simply were not. And it was, maybe not a criminal code crime, but criminal, at least criminal in principle, as far as I'm concerned, the way that the whole thing was handled.
Now, Craig does make a good point about Fox News, but I was speaking
Right.
specifically about Canadian media. And if the CBC, because James said CBC sent Colton Prail, if they did, I didn't see it. And if they did, okay, fine. But as you point out, having an interview is one thing, but what you do with it, because editing can change context real fast. And there's a great scene from that old Burt Reynolds movie called Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, where the sheriff ends up to break up a riot or something like that, pulls his pistol out of his and fires it 3-4 times in the air to disperse the crowd. And the media gets involved and they chop it up to make him look like he's shooting at people. And, they absolutely trash him. And that can be done very easily, especially with modern technology. So Did CBC do that? I don't know. I didn't see the report.
Right. And just for the record, I want to point out again, because Anthony made a point in the chat room, a comment about how the 600. There it is again. Trudeau gave them $650 million. No, I mean that's true that he did that, but we've been giving money to journalists for a long time in this country. That the $650 million that the government gave them recently is not new, but more importantly, it doesn't matter. Okay, these are you give people money to sustain their companies and their employment, etc. I'm not justifying it. I think that the government was wrong to do that, but I don't see the connection between that and lazy journalism. Lazy journalism has been a problem in this country for a long time now. It's getting worse. The journalists are not, the media is not serving the public well, and it's harmful to our democracy. And that's been happening for a long time, regardless of whatever support or subsidization that journalists are getting from the federal government.
Well, we got to take a break, but let me just end with this. That is one of the pillars of a solid Western democracy, is the right of freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of assembly are three of our most important rights. Okay, if John's ready, we'll take our break now, and we'll be back after this with more on the Nick and Joe Show right after this.
We all know that climate change is real. But with countries like China and India failing to do their part, what Canadians need now more than ever is a Made in Canada climate change plan. A real plan that responds to the real-world needs of Canadians. A balanced plan that supports responsible economic growth and strengthens our essential infrastructure. A responsible plan that protects our natural environment and ensures that all Canadians enjoy the blessings of clean air, clean land, and clean water for generations to come. It's time for Canadian politicians to show real leadership in the world, putting partisanship and ideology aside. It's time for a sensible climate plan. We're the International Climate Science Coalition Canada, and we're ready to help. To learn more, visit our website, icsc-canada.com.
Okay, welcome back to the Nick and Joe Show, folks. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. We're going to slide back into the international stage. As you know, our glorious leader, our used sock salesman, and he is trying to think what to call her. She's the deputy prime minister, but I don't want to say flunky. All right, that fits. Anyway, anyway, I'm being a little disrespectful of the office, and I shouldn't be. But they ended up in Ukraine this week. Now, look, everybody knows there's a war going on in Ukraine. And first of all, the U.S. has sent some people over there. Nancy Pelosi and a bunch of her left-wing lunatics went over there. There's been the British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has gone. So it feels like he's a little late to the party, but they've got U2, the rock band, doing a rock concert in a building in Kiev. Now, look, number one, there's a tremendous amount of hypocrisy going on here. First of all, Justin Trudeau is nothing but a bag full of hot air. We were supposed to send over, and maybe we have, I don't know. But we were supposed to send over some of our heavy artillery, the M77 howitzers that we have in the Canadian Army, which the Americans use and a lot of countries use because it's the best piece of artillery in the world. There were some logistical problems. How are we going to get it there? I'm thinking, geez, the Globemaster could probably take 3 or 4 of them by its. One of them could take 3 or 4. How many are we sending over? We don't have that many. But anyway, the point is, he's standing in front of you two while they're playing for him and Freeland. Neither one of them's got a mask on. Now, when he comes home to Canada, he's wearing a mask. The rate of inoculation in Ukraine is about 35%. Okay, they've got one of the lowest infection rates, inoculation rates in the world of what you would call, let's say, a second or first world country. Then he comes back to Canada, where the inoculation rate is pushing 90%, and he's wearing a mask. Like, is this just virtue signaling? Does he? And they were within 3 or 4 feet, standing right in front of YouTube. They gave not Boris Johnson, Zelensky, a great big hug. Breaking every rule there is if you're worried about COVID. And yet he comes home, and all of a sudden he's got to have his mask on. Like, what kind of an idiot is this guy? Does he think no one's going to notice? Does he think that we're all just a bunch of dummies? Or that, well, he must be super inoculated because he can put the mask on or off whenever he feels like without risking himself or others, if you believe in the mask idea in the first place. So, Joseph, I don't know. Just every time he goes use the old naval term, goes ashore, he sticks our collective foot in our mouths for us right up to the kneecap and makes us look like idiots for electing this guy. That pregnant pause is called "You Can Jump In Now."
Oh dear. I don't know where to go with this because there's our so-called military aid to Ukraine. I don't know how many artillery pieces that we were going to send over, but I'm sure it wasn't a dozen. So, which begs the question, of course, why bother? And no disrespect. I mean, it's fine you want to help out, but really, that's the very fact that we can't send over serious military aid, and I'm not advocating for sending over a lot of military aid. I have some concerns about that as well, but the fact that we can only send over, a few of this and a few of these things is a pretty strong indication of how undersupplied, poorly supplied, and underfunded our military is. Very serious situation, number one.
I have an answer for you as far as how many pieces of artillery of this size, and they are. The M777 is one of the best pieces of artillery in the world, and the Americans have them by the thousands. We have 37. So, are we going to send them all? I mean, granted, it's not that we're using them right now.
So
have
how many
to
do you
have
send
them for
over?
training.
4, 5? No.
Yeah,
Wait, let me
exactly.
rephrase
That's
that.
exactly
How
the
many
point.
are we planning to send over?
That's like sending somebody a knife but not a fork when he sits down to eat. It's completely ineffective.
So,
I mean, I'm sure the Ukrainians would be grateful for it.
Yeah. So
but
that's
by the time you
that's issue number one.
And I think Chrissy is asking what's an
Second thing I
N27.
want
I
to bring
think
up
she's
here,
referring
Nick.
to the mask, the N29. Unless she's asking about what the artillery is, that's called an M777. It's one of the most modern artillery pieces in the world right now.
It's a big gun.
Yes, it goes boom and throws a shell a long way.
So,
and
so the second thing I have to say, the second problem that I would have to raise with what with the Prime Minister going over is this whole idea of, okay, if you're going over to do fact finding, okay, first of all, how about going over and giving a speech to the Ukrainian Parliament, like the president of Ukraine gave a speech to the Canadian
yes.
Parliament, even though he didn't come over, he did it virtually. So that would be, I think, something that would be reasonable for the Prime Minister to do. Or how about touring some of the areas that have been bombed out? It might be helpful for civilian morale, to actually see some foreign leaders coming and having an opportunity to talk with them. No, we don't do that. What do? We go to a concert, okay, and live it up. Okay, to me, stay home and put a CD into your CD player, okay? Or I don't know if anybody even does that anymore. It's
No.
DVDs, CDs, whatever, okay? But you know what I'm
That's
saying?
old school. Yes, I know exactly. It'd been better. He would have done us a greater
I don't
service to
get
the
it. Okay,
Ukrainian
what
people.
is the point you're trying to make? Number 3, if you want to get into the mask thing, there's a joke I could make here about blackface. I don't know. I don't wear a mask anywhere anymore. I have a mask in my pocket in case I find myself going to a medical facility where they're going to ask me to wear a mask. But I'm not wearing a mask at a grocery store, at a gas station, or walking on the street. Hey, don't get me wrong. If you want to wear a mask, that's fine. But I don't wear masks. I'm sorry. So,
What is this
and
mask thing
clearly
you
the Prime
talk
Minister
about?
doesn't wear a mask either, unless, of course, he wants to virtue signal at our House of Commons. And here I will say this, Nick. Okay, the fourth thing or the third thing I want to bring up is coming back home to our House of Commons, where you cannot get into a Parliament building, and I'm not just talking about where the House of Commons is, but office buildings in the parliamentary precinct. They will not let you in unless you are wearing a mask and you have been double vaccinated. And the result of that is that we have elected members of Parliament in this country who are not allowed to sit in the House of Commons because of that rule. And you want to know, this is what I have to say, dragging the whole thing back to this. We're against, these guys who are members of the House of Commons now, who are running for the Conservative Party leadership, Pierre Poilievre, Leslyn Lewis, and I believe that Scott Aitchison is also a sitting member of Parliament. You want to fight mask mandates, you want to fight vaccine mandates, start right at home. I would like to see you guys bringing a motion to do away with the mask mandates and the vaccine mandates in the House of Commons right now, so that all of your colleagues, irrespective of what political party they belong to, can actually take their seat, as they have the right to do as members of Parliament, and in fact a duty to do as I said, duly elected members of Parliament. Now, Roman Baber, Patrick Brown, and Jean Charest are not members of Parliament. So it's not up to them to be trying to change the rules that parties have agreed to. So, I didn't watch the debate tonight yet. I'm going to go back and look at it later on. But I do know that these 3 members of Parliament have been talking vociferously for the last couple of weeks about how strong they are against mandates and that. Well, okay, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, guys. Get back to the House of Commons, and I want to see you guys fighting for the right of all of your colleagues to sit in the House, even if they're not wearing masks and even if they're not vaccinated.
Well, that
There
does
you go.
bring up a good question. Like, I don't know how much longer they can withstand the pressure to get rid of these mandates in the first place, because most countries around the world either have done away with them or are doing away with them within the foreseeable future. And Canada is the only place left that, Like people who are not vaccinated can't fly. So
Yeah, I don't
if
know if
someone who's not,
I don't know if we're the
sorry,
only place left, but
well,
certainly
we're one of
there's
the very
no
few. Let's put it that
justification.
way.
Right.
So the point is
You
that
can't
if
fly.
Joe Blow
You
wants to
can't
go see
fly, Nick.
grandma,
You can't take a train. You can't take a a bus in between cities. I mean, it's ridiculous.
well, I'm not sure about the last one
You know,
because I came down from
but you could go.
Chilukot
But you
by
could go. But you could go to. But you could go to Ukraine and you could attend. He won't let you. The prime minister will not let you fly on a plane. Okay. Here's the thing. I guarantee you this, Nick. I guarantee you this. That you and I, when we fly on a domestic flight, you and I have to, well, you have to be vaccinated. So I don't know if you're vaccinated, Nick, but you may not even be allowed to. But you can't get on a plane without being double vaccinated, and you have to wear your mask when you're on the plane. I guarantee you that the plane that the prime minister flew on, they weren't following those rules.
On that, you and I are going to both agree. But I noticed something today. I think it was on Facebook or someplace like that. In the town where I went to high school in Leamington, Ontario, there is an air service that says all you have to do is show up, and we'll give you a 15-minute COVID test, but no masks and no restrictions on where you can fly. And I think that's going to be the future for aviation in Canada, at least with smaller airlines, because you're never going to change Air Canada's mind or WestJet's mind. They're too big for that. But I was just delighted to see that there's now an avenue that people can take. Look, because if it means if I have to go, or if Joe Blow, let's just decides that grandma down in Arizona, who's been a snowbird, is now in very ill health, at risk of dying, and he wants to go down and spend some time with her before she passes, has a way to do it. Because the Canadian government says, sorry, she's going to die and you're not going to be there because you didn't take the juice, man. So bad on you. This is how we punish you. Now, private entrepreneurs are saying there's a market here. Maybe we can work something out and we can get this done.
I don't know how long that's going to last, though, because aviation is federally regulated, so they may not be able to take passengers. What they may be doing is breaking the law, and in this, for me, civil disobedience is completely justified. So I would support them, but I don't think that there's an industry here to be exploited, because I'm pretty sure that they have to follow the vaccine and mask mandates on their flights anyway, because aviation, as I said, is federally regulated here in Canada.
Well, I don't want to.
Look, why not just get rid of the darn thing? And here's the thing: if
it's not about mandate.
If you believe that the masks are going to prevent you from getting sick, and if you believe so if you believe that masks are going to help prevent you from getting sick, and you believe that vaccinations, okay, and they're not really vaccinations, okay, but we'll call them that for now, are going to prevent you from getting sick, then by all means, get jabbed and wear your mask. But if you've been quote unquote vaccinated, and by the way, I am, remember that, okay? So this isn't me talking about something in theory or whatever. If you believe that this is going to be helpful to you and prevent you from getting sick, by all means, get vaccinated and wear a mask. But if you're vaccinated and wear a mask, and these things are effective, and presumably you think they're effective because you are doing it, okay, then why do you care if the person next to you is not vaccinated or doesn't have a mask? You're perfectly protected. If you don't believe you're protected, then what are you bothering with this stuff for? And why, don't. If you think making the guy next to you is going to if you think making the person sitting next to you wear a mask is going to protect you, then by all means wear your own mask, and then you don't have to force him to wear a mask.
Yeah, well, let me speak to this from somebody who's a little closer to the aviation industry. I don't want to name any names. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but I know several airlines who turn a blind eye to it because they know what nonsense it is. And it's just, In one case, an airline had a guy call up and say, "How do I get over the border without this?" He said the answer was, "Well, you'll need to charter an airplane." And he said, "Do I have to worry about COVID?" I said, "Well, when are you coming back?" And he said, "I'm not. I'm out of this country permanently. I've had enough of this Kanakistan, and I'm going down to Arizona or New Mexico or wherever he was going." So there are companies out there who will look the other way, especially smaller firms
Yeah.
that kind of, pardon the phrase, but fly under the radar.
Yeah.
And the other point that Chrissy just makes, you can always just go to Watertown and fly out of there. It's unfortunate that has to be the case. But although, let me take that and let me think about that. I think to cross the border in a car, you still need to be vaccinated. Is that not true? You'd know that better than I would.
No, I don't. You know what? I don't know. I have crossed the border, but I don't recall whether or not I was asked by the Americans whether I was vaccinated or not. So I would have to check that. But I do know you don't have to go to Watertown. You could go down to Ogdensburg now.
That's true.
Ogdensburg has
That's right. You don't
a
even have
nice
to go that
little
far.
airport as well.
Yep.
I'm sorry?
And I said, you're right. That's right.
So it's
Because
not, you don't even
Watertown's
have to
even
go the 2 hours to Watertown. Just go down to 45
Ogdensburg.
minutes to Ogdensburg. And
Yep.
the border crossing there is a lot easier than it is down by the Thousand Islands
Well,
Bridge
certainly
down in
not the backups,
Lansdowne.
that's for sure.
So they're
So
nowhere near the same backups. Yeah.
I think that there is certainly this will end. The question is when. That's what's people are getting frustrated with. They can't maintain this forever because too many
We have
people
to
are upset
demand
about
it.
it.
We have to demand it from our leaders. We
Yeah,
have to
well,
demand it from our leaders. We don't have to be violent. We don't have to be boorish or crude or rude, but we do have to be firm. We have to demand from our leaders that they drop these federal mandates, because it's the federal mandates are the only ones left in this country. Except
yeah,
for
everything else is
if you're going to
down.
go into a hospital in Ontario anyway, you have to wear a mask. Okay, great. And actually, I just said they're the only ones in this country. I think in Quebec, they still might have a mask mandate, but they're going to be dropping that soon as well. So,
Yeah, so it's really only Ontario that's left, even though it's federally mandated. Doug Ford seems to be snuggled up tight to this, and he won't let it go. And I don't see either Del Duca or Horwath letting it go either. And this is
hey,
what's got me so.
hey, listen, if the Liberals are already saying that if they form the next government in Ontario, that they're going to make COVID vaccinations mandatory, that they're going to require them on your vaccination card for when you go to school, for kids going to public school. And the irony of this is they're not even real vaccinations.
As Craig says, as of last.
Nick, what was the last time? Okay, just before here's a simple question to ask, okay? This is how vaccinations work. They give you immunity. They're either permanent immunity or you have to go, you might go years without having to have a booster shot. Okay? How many times have you had to have a polio vaccination in your life, Nick?
Once, if I ever got it.
So they're already talking with this COVID stuff of not just 3, but 4, 5, 6 vaccinations, boosters in 2 years. That's because they're not real vaccines. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I got double jabbed too, and I keep telling people I got vaxxed, but I wasn't really a vaccination. It's a different process, and it's turned out that it just isn't that effective. But hey, as I said, Nick, if you think it protects you, by all means, get it done, and then don't bug the guy next to you. Okay. Don't
here's something.
The guy next to you gets vaccinated and wears a mask. I'm sorry, I know I'm talking over you, Nick, but I'm very passionate about this lately. The whole thing is just, it's so mind-numbingly stupid.
Okay, let me make a couple of points. First of all, Craig says as of last October, all non-Americans entering the U.S. at a land border must be fully vaccinated. Okay, so that clears that up. Now, the other thing is there was just It's a huge document dump by Pfizer. I think, if my memory serves me right, it was about 80,000 pages worth of stuff that Pfizer was trying to keep from the public for 75 years. And I forget what court it was, but they said, no, you got to drop that. So they did. They brought out these documents. And yet, and you would think, out of 80,000 documents, that the news media would have been all over it, digging through it to find out what's inside it. Because a document that big concerning a topic like this, there's got to be some stuff in there that we need to know that we don't know right now. And yet, I haven't heard a word. Not in Canadian press. The only place covering it at all is Fox in the States. All the other lettered news outlets, not touching it, backing away. They don't want anybody to know about it. And that troubles me. And it goes back again to your idea about journalism. That would take work. That would take effort. And besides, it doesn't follow the narrative that we want people to understand. It's your turn. Joseph? You there? Hello, Joseph. Am I there? Can anybody hear me? John,
I can hear you, Nick. I don't know what's happened to Joseph.
The
There he is.
Yeah, well, that's because it's the only thing that the media is really interested in, Nick, down there is, or here, is Donald Trump's tax returns.
Oh, God. If I hear that phrase one more time.
If Donald Trump makes his tax returns available to the public, you can for sure count on the mainstream media crawling all over those documents. But this
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because how many years did they spend on Russiagate to come up empty-handed? If they'll put that kind of effort, that kind of muscle.
And it turned out to be nothing.
Yeah. So, okay, take these documents. And if it's nothing, if it's just, technical data that doesn't really impact, people's health in a negative way, all right, fine. Tell us, show us. But they won't touch it. It's like you'll get leprosy, or you'll get the bubonic plague if you happen to open the top cover of this thing. And it's one of the great failings of our media in the last 10 years, at least. That and the fact they went after Trump and came up empty-handed.
I don't know what else to say, Nick. It's as Roman Baber, who's running for the leadership of the Conservative Party, says, our whole response to COVID was one of the greatest public policy failures of not just our generation, but of generations.
Yeah,
and it's a serious problem. And I just wish that people paid more attention to it.
Well, with that said, you're welcome, Laurentian Terry. They're just thanking us for a great show. It was a great show, and we are pretty much out of time. So I'm going to bow out. For Joseph and I wish you all a great week, and we'll see you all again next Wednesday night. In the meantime, Ubi caritas et amor, Deus ibi est. Good evening, God bless. Don't let anything disturb your peace, and may have a fair wind and a following sea.